we couldn't have an Insider Summit, a customer day, without featuring some customers. So I'm so excited for you to get to meet a few of them today. So first, April. April's local here. She's the CEO of Going Greenhouse based in Arizona. It's a residential cleaning service. Hey, April.
Hello, how are you?
Awesome. Thanks for coming on. I feel like we could set your background to be anything. Awesome background.
You
can. Pretty cool. All right.
I'm very on brand today.
Perfect. Next, Ryan Cobbins. Ryan is owner and CEO of Coffee at the Point coffee shop out of Denver, Colorado. Hey, Ryan.
How are you guys?
Great. Ryan's using the Zoom feature. We're all doing something, the blur feature. We're all doing something a little different here. And then last up, we've got Brad Stevens. Brad's founder and CEO of Outsource Access. It's a virtual assistant company based out of Atlanta. Hey, Brad.
Hello, everybody. I have a very unoriginal actual office behind me here. So
is that yours? Looks almost like a Peloton or something in the background. Is that what it is or no?
Oh, no, that's just my instructional screen when I do videos.
Okay, fancy. I like it. All right, so I know I introduced you all by name and company, but I'd love if you could just share a quick background of what your business does and maybe what was going on in your company when you found out about Trainual, heard about Trainual. Like, why did you even need it? So why don't we just go in the same order? April, we'll start with you.
So I own a house cleaning company and we have really high turnover in this industry. I've owned the business for 10 years. I started it myself with a vacuum and mop and was cleaning myself. And it was really important to me that I would hire other people that would have the same level or standard that I do. And so the training has been a really huge part of our success. We have all 5-star reviews and we're growing quickly, but when we realized that we needed Trainual was when we kept just struggling with training people. And we had a manual that we had them read and it just wasn't sinking in. And I had heard about Trainual through the EO Accelerator program because Chris and I were in the same program together. And I thought, that's it, that's the ticket. And being able to add pictures and videos and have them take little quizzes at the end has made such a humongous difference.
So for you, it was really consistency, right? It was like, how do we do the same thing over and over? And that leads to great reviews. And that, as a people-powered like service business, that matters so much.
It really does.
How about you, Ryan? What's tell us a little bit about the company and what you had going on.
Yeah, so I own it's a 3,000 square foot coffee and wine lounge in one of the revitalizing areas of Denver called 5 Points. The area is just growing like crazy. And so we serve things from, your traditional coffee and espresso drinks, loose leaf teas to gelato, pastries, and a whole bunch of good stuff. Pre-COVID, we had a staff of 25. We've got a staff of about 14 or 15. I think our folks have realized that they make more money in tips because we do a shared pool when there's less people than when there's more. And so there's more of an interest now to make sure that I was going to say do the work of 2 people, but it's really not really doing the work of 2. Be a little bit more efficient. One of the struggles that I've had, and we're going into our 11th year, one of the struggles that I talk about with our staff all the time is alignment. Right? How do we get all, 15 of our folks moving in the right direction? Training is one of the largest aspects of alignment, getting folks started off and having success. And I've heard that, when staff don't have success, it's about a $16,000 hit when a staff person leaves. And very rarely does a staff person leave because of the business. They usually leave because of leadership. And so making sure that I do my part in providing that level of leadership. Trainual for us, I don't know how I found it, but I feel like a bloody genius having found it because it's really streamlined our process in terms of having all of our documentation in one spot. And so when our staff who frequently says, well, if it's not written down or there's no process for this, I try to reassure them that, hey, we made it 11 years somehow. Something's written down somewhere, and now it's easier for them to have everything accessible, even accessible on their phones. And so Trainual has been a blessing for us. We're still in the early stages and phases of rolling it out. We're redoing and going back through our written policy and procedures, just making sure that everything is updated and how can we increase efficiencies. But we're pretty excited about it.
So I love that you went to efficiency. So from April with consistency, you're focused on efficiency. Like, how many people in the chat? Seriously, I want to know how in the chat, if you could do the work of 25 people with 14 people, like, would anyone sign up for that? I think we all would. That's like the small business's dream. And so being able to document those best practices is taking your most efficient, your most productive people and saying, you know, how does she do that? How does he do that? How do we make everyone operate like that? And that just makes us more profitable. So I love that you've done that. Same with alignment. It's so crucial to just be on the same page with everybody and keep everybody knowing how you want to operate even when you're not there. So I love that. I could dig in so much. But first, Brad, I'd love to hear just a little more about what you've got going on and how you or why you came to Trainual.
I appreciate it. Well, thanks for putting this together. And these case studies are what always help me the best when I'm learning about something. So it's great to hear everybody's story. So I actually have two businesses that we use Trainual with. So Outsource Access is my company. We provide fully managed and trained VAs out of the Philippines. Our goal is to help small to medium businesses kind of realize their potential. And so the growth of this business kind of started with my own first VA, who I thought was going to manage my email and so forth. And now she's my chief operating officer over 360 employees that we've grown to in about 2 years. And that is kind of the basis of why this is so critical is that, first of all, I'm a process driven type of person, and outsourcing is something I've always done. And unless you know how to do process and system, you are going to fail. Most people internally in their businesses, things are a mess and they try to introduce an outsourced resource and they kind of introduce them into an external tornado and it kind of makes a bit of a mess. So we officially launched our operation in June of 2019. And, because of COVID, I couldn't go over. I went over there prior to that and I couldn't go to the Philippines. We set up a whole corporation there, growing 15, 20 people per month. And systems and processes were more wildly important than ever for our business. And, trying to use Google Docs and so forth as a way to kind of cobble things together only lasts for so long. And that's when Trainual really became really significant for us, is that for our internal business, rapidly growing. And as we're putting on layers of management and management over teams of VAs and staff, it just helped us really create the workflows and helping us in the onboarding process about bringing on 15 to 20 new clients per month and the workflows in the process. When we do a discovery session, like with a client, figure out what their needs are, we learn what a VA needs to be trained on. And so we actually use Trainual to put that VA through a mini boot camp before they get paired, with the client. So it's allowing us to increase the speed of everything. And then secondly, for us as in our business, when somebody hires a virtual assistant or virtual staff to plug into their business, the first thing we have to figure out is, well, what have you got documented? Are we going to step into kind of no documentation, things are on napkins and spreadsheets, or are you going to have a process? And so for us, it was a phenomenal tool. And I do a ton of speaking. I've spoken for a bunch of business organizations globally for EO, how we've known each other, is recommending as a tool to help our clients when we're going to have a VA plug in and help them. They don't have it done, documented. So it's a key tool that helps us with us being more successful with our clients. And our business is all about, retention and the game plan.
Yeah.
So those are kind of the key fundamentals for us, both our internal business and then also with our clients and helping them get things streamlined. And then during COVID, I ended up launching another company called One-on-One Connections, where we're kind of the only private label, fully managed one-on-one connection program for member-based organizations and conferences. I'm part of EO and trying to help members get connected. And so this took off. It's a purely virtual company. And I use some of our VAs and a partner of mine, Jason Rhodes, in the technology. And being able to use Trainual to document and manage our workflows allowed us to rapidly launch this program globally, now in New Zealand, Australia, and the US, by using Trainual to efficiently document processes, onboard people. So I'd say the overall theme for me, Chris, is it's about increasing velocity. The faster that businesses can get things done, they can onboard clients, they can get people successful. That allows us to bring on more people faster in our own business and employees, as well as with clients. So that's kind of the theme for us.
I love that you mentioned your clients too, because when we take on more clients or more customers, a lot of times that's when the wheels spin off, right? Like something's working well and you fill up your capacity and then you've got some demand for what you're doing. So you add another person to provide that service, and you add another person and they just don't do things as well because something was lost in translation. And so a lot of times it's adding customers that forces us to really take a look at our systems, because otherwise things break. Now, Ryan, you made a great point about just kind of collecting the 11 years of knowledge, right? Like you had been in business for a while, so you're doing something right. And a lot of times I tell people, you don't have to create process, you're just collecting process. It already exists. So when you started this project, how did you go about collecting? Was there someone that took the lead? Was it you? How did you know where to start?
It was me, as long as my role as the plumber, the electrician, the psychiatrist, and psychologist, just like probably many other folks on the call. It was really me. I'm in an industry and started coffee at the point at a time when, to be frank, I really didn't even drink much coffee. I mean, I drank a latte from Starbucks once every 6 months. But I remember my wife at the time, I just remember laying in bed and her saying, "Hey, you should open up a coffee shop here. It's like a block away from the house." And she said it as a joke, but I took it as a challenge. And so I knew that process was important, right? I love McDonald's, as many people that hate McDonald's. I also love McDonald's, not just because of their hamburgers and their fries, which are delicious, but the fact that they've made billions based on a process, right? The same McDonald's in where April is, if I ordered a hamburger, it will be the same hamburger if I ordered in Denver, right? And so, but they have an identified process that they send folks through. And it's, to me, admirable. And so for me, being the small guy on the block, how can I implement processes that these big guys are using? And here's Trainual that's able to implement those things. One of the main challenges that I've had is I have so many documents on my Google Drive, and so it's hard to tell which one is updated and like what's the one to use. Where Trainual allows me to put all that stuff in one place, and when it's updated, I know when I go to Trainual, that's the updated version I want.
Got it. So it sounds like you were kind of wearing all those hats. Were you pulling espresso and pouring wine and do it like,
for the first 5 or 6 years, I'm opening and closing. I tell my staff now I'm not above doing anything, right? I'm the guy that will take out the trash. But if you walk in and you find me behind the espresso machine, like there's a problem there. And so I need to be doing a better job working on things. I should have implemented Trainual, for example, years ago versus months ago. And so, which would have had, I would have been able to keep some of my hair in this if that were the case, right? So, but it's all part of the process. And so, yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so April, let's go to you. You started the business also kind of being involved with the service, right? And so how did you go about what to document first? Like, was it the service you were doing? Was it some of the administrative roles? Like, what did you take off your plate first?
It was the actual cleaning process. So back when I first started the business, I just thought, oh, how hard could it be? I'm just going to go clean people's houses. I know what clean looks like. I'm just going to do that. And then, word of mouth started to spread, and I hired my second person. And that person became my office manager. Eventually, she worked for me for 10 years. But she and I were at this house, and we left, and I said, "Hey, do you fold the towels a certain way in the bathroom to make sure that it looks nice?" And she said, "No." I said, "Well, I think we should probably do that." And that's kind of like where it all started. Like, maybe we should kind of standardize this and create a checklist. And so something that we always do is we'll go out and do a consultation with the client. We'll go through that checklist with them, and so that they know exactly what to expect. So when it comes to employees and it comes to clients, having expectations that are met and communicated, I think is the key for us, at least. And so that checklist turned into the manual that I eventually wrote that nobody read and then became what we implemented into Trainual.
All right, I'm going to stick a bookmark in that nobody read because I want to make sure we come back to that. But first, Brad, I want to ask you, it sounded like you were growing a ton, hiring a lot of people, and you were using Trainual a lot for your orientation. Is that the first thing that you started to document, is just getting up and running at the company?
For us, it was taking, and I mean, and process and documentation have always been a part of everything I've done, even when it's like, cooking eggs in the morning. Like I have a certain workflow that has to be followed. So it's kind of ingrained. So we just were using a system internally that was inefficient for us as far as using Google Docs and so forth to kind of piece everything, together. So for us, the first thing actually was just our internal layers of management infrastructure of how we. So for us, the workflow being in the people business that we are, I mean, we're going through 200 applicants per month in the Philippines that we're going through to put them through a whole process to vet and evaluate, see if they're going to be a fit for a VA for our clients. So it allowed us to document that whole process for our HR team. And then once we kind of get them and vet people that are going to be a good fit, then we have to put them through a whole set of interviews before we pair them off, with a potential client to send them candidates. So it was documenting all of that process. And then next, it's once a client chooses one of those VAs that we presented to them, now there's that onboarding process of that VA to service that specific client, which it's a kind of a unique thumbprint. I mean, our business is unique. We're a very custom solution. We're not just a call center bookkeeping. We kind of do a bunch of things. So our VAs wear a lot of different hats. And that makes it even more critical for documentation, because when we do that discovery session with a client, we figure out sort of what are the biggest pain points that are what I call administrative and operational clutter, right? Which is part of what Trainual helps to detangle, is getting that stuff documented, cleared up, and figure out what those needs are. And then we can go then take a VA and if they, hey, I need the VA as part of their work to start doing Canva and do graphic design for social media posting. Well, we have a whole training documented in Trainual to get a VA up to speed rapidly on using Canva and documentation. Or some of our clients want bookkeeping done. So we've created a whole Trainual module, because a lot of the stuff in small to medium business, none of it's rocket science, right? At the end of the day, it's just a set of systems and processes. And if you can bring someone to the table, it's a fast learner, good communicator, can take feedback, and you give them a good tool to communicate with, like a Trainual, and organize it well, you can set them up for success. So for those three stages of bringing on potential VAs, getting them trained, and getting with the client, and then the third step is then documenting the processes for the client and actually them getting their own Trainual account so that we can recommend. If they don't have a system that they're using, then that's kind of the one that we recommend. So it kind of touches all aspects of our business.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you again for that. So one of the things we believe is that documentation and best practices really are a bottoms up kind of exercise. And when you are the one wearing all the hats and doing everything, then you are the bottom. And so in order to get up, you have to document that. But for everyone in our businesses, they're out there coming up with new ways to do things, new ways to fold towels, new ways to pour coffee or to delight a customer. So I'm curious, how did you first, anyone here, how did you announce this to your team? Like, hey, this is an initiative that we're going to start. How did you share this with the team without freaking them out and them saying, what do you mean you want me to write down everything that I do? So anyone can take that question.
My team asked for it. They were like, we need something. I had a trainer who was like, this isn't working. We need something else. Nobody reads this. What can we do? And luckily it happened to be around the time I had heard about Trainual.
Now that's a great team right there. How about you guys? Any trepidation of your people trying to get into this activity?
For us, it's kind of, I saw in the prior section, people talking about core values and being aligned to that. Right. And so for us, we don't bring people into our business. And I'm big on frameworks and systems. I mean, we use EOS to run our whole business, entrepreneurial operating system. We use Culture Index as our whole assessment process to assess and determine the right people that are right fit. And our core values, similar to what you guys are talking about, that's not just a piece of paper or words, but it's literally a part of our vocabulary every day. And they spell great because I'm a huge fan of Jim Collins' Good to Great. So we made our core values be GREAT. And A stands for attention to detail. And unless that is a fit, and we have assessments during our process of any layer you come into our business, and if that's not a fit, and T is for thoughtful communication. So both of those are critical parts of our core values. So for me, a lot of times it starts with the beginning of the type of people you bring in that have the right mindset, that are oriented, and they want to become a 2.0 version of yourself. E in our core values is ever-long quest for improvement. So if we're doing a right job of getting the right people into our business to begin with, then bringing something to the table like a Trainual is a natural fit because it's aligned. If I'm having to fight an uphill battle, then I've done a wrong job with the wrong people in the wrong seats in our business. So I'm pleased to say, for the most part, very well received because it's in alignment with what brings everyone peace. Process and peace is one of our phrases. It brings a tranquility and reduces a lot of the anxiety. And to be honest, it helps you from losing some really great employees as well. A lot of people lose people because they're not organized and structured. And it could be a great employee if you had a little bit more things clarified. And the typical entrepreneur tends to be crazy and all over the place. And they want to hire this employee and, hey, can't you just figure it all out? Here's all this stuff, like read this, that, and the other. And somebody that could be an amazing employee, you lose because they can't survive in that tornado. So I know it sounds like we're all, but it's process regardless. It just makes a big difference. And so announcing it to our team, we were layered in how we brought it on and made sure everybody went through the training, and we were good in our process, not floodgates, not fire hosing, but make sure we layered it in and how we were going to do it, modules and pieces at a time, department at a time. Yeah. So it kind of could be digestible.
Yeah, that's a really smart tip. So I want to make sure that I just reemphasize this with everybody that's listening. If you just dump everything on your people all at once inside Trainual, then it's really no different, maybe marginally better, but really no different than just sharing access to your entire Dropbox folder or your entire Google Drive. Like, you don't want to throw everything on someone. And I know Sean and Sasha talked a little bit about training experience and how we do it. But if you can roll things out in phases and say, here's what your first 90 days look like, or here's what you're going to go through in your first week, you're setting that stage by stage expectation, and you make it so that they're more likely to retain everything. You're not just flooding them. Ryan, I'm curious, have you looped anyone else into the process yet of helping you with this?
Yeah, I mean, and they're really excited about it. I think, I framed it in the sense that, and our staff knows, in order for us and for them really to make more money, there's a great degree of alignment that needs to take place. And one of the things that we realize, and I don't know how it is in other areas, but being in food and beverage and a lot of different industries here, I think the pandemic has caused a little bit of atrophy when it comes to processing different scenarios and situations. And I've seen this over the last several years in terms of when I was actually working, boss person would cuss at me and you just continue to work. And now obviously that's kind of changed. So with that atrophy that tends to take the place, it's easier for us to point to something, to not have to remember or memorize a process or procedure. And the main thing is being able to know where to go to get the answer is the most important thing. And then we have folks that with all types of capacities, that some folks need a little bit of extra time to learn this, that, and the other, or would be categorized as your true follower. We have other folks that want to come in, step in immediately and want to lead, right? They want to be fed more information. And so they have the opportunity now to have information at their fingertips in order for them to advance in a way that they want to advance when they start with us.
Yeah, so let's talk about advancing, because for anyone that was on this morning and saw some of the new announcements, the roles, responsibilities, functions that we've announced, a big focus for us is helping people along their career path so that there's a little more transparency to what someone in a role that I aspire to does. So I can go in and say, okay, those are the things that person does. That's what I have to learn if I want to move into that next position. So I'm curious, have any of you in your companies had experiences with someone taking on a new role and having to train their replacement in the system? Has the system been useful for that?
I mean, I could speak to it because it's a part of our core business. It's one of the first questions that we get when a client, kind of comes on board for us with VAs. It's like, well, what happens if we have turnover, right? What if I've invested this knowledge and effort into this VA and something happens? So again, going back to, we try at the very beginning to set a very high bar. We bring people into our business that are committed to this in a career path. So we don't have much turnover, but occasionally those things happen. We had a VA the other day whose uncle left him a bunch of money, and he only allowed it if he would go invest in his master's degree. So, unfortunately, that was one that we lost. But having the process is documented from day one and requiring the clients to kind of do it and having a checkup. And I would encourage anybody to do that too. Even if you're doing this internally, is having an accountability system that you're rechecking the train, because it can get outdated sometimes if you get new processes and systems that come up. But for us, it's a huge selling factor for us is that we tell them from day one, yeah, when you come on board with us, we're documenting, everything. If you don't have a process, Trainual is the one that we recommend. And so if something does happen, a new VA can plug in and get up to speed very quickly if we've done a good job on the documentation process. So yeah, we've had to do that when that turnover situation happens. And then the same thing with internal roles. Internal roles in our company. When we've lost someone or someone's, we had a couple of women that got, having children recently. And so they're going to be out on kind of maternity leave, and they were phenomenal contributors in our HR department. And so we added and having things documented, we're able to kind of plug them in. So reduces the stress, because lots of institutional knowledge rolling around of a lot of employees, and a lot of people found out during COVID what it was like losing people that out of that institutional knowledge that walks out the door. And it is epically costly.
Absolutely. And April, you mentioned an office manager that was promoted. Was it the same sort of thing, like jumping between roles?
Yeah, absolutely. So that office manager was promoted prior to Trainual, but what she did actually was, so we started with just training our crew members on Trainual. So this is somebody who's brand new hire, potentially has never cleaned a house before, doesn't really know what the standard is. And we started there, and then we implemented a crew leader training, and then we implemented the trainers training. So anybody can be promoted to be a crew leader, to a trainer, and all we do is just sit them in front of the computer and say, take these quizzes, watch these videos, and you should be good to go.
So for anyone that's listening here, I know everybody's getting a copy of the book that I put out, but one of the things that I talk about in the book is you want to train first in what's going to make the biggest ROI across your business. And so for April's business, that was the crew, the people that are actually doing the training, because she has the most people in that role. And so getting the policies and processes correct for that role is the highest priority. And then the next group was the crew leaders, and then the next group might be different administrative roles. And so if you sort of stack rank in your company, what things need to be done the most, or what people, how many people do I have in a role? You can kind of work your way through the order to document. At least that's what I've found to be useful. I know we only have about 10 minutes with each of you left. So Sasha mentioned in our last session how we actually use Trainual for as part of our interview process. We have a role for candidates. And Brad, to your point, screening people for core values and making sure it's a good fit during the hiring process is super important. So assuming they make it past the first stage, we invite people into our account to go through some content in Trainual, and it shows their commitment. It shows that they're aligned, and they sort of self-select into the next stage in our process. And so I'm curious if any of you have cool, unique ways that you've used the system like that. And I'll leave this open for anyone.
Yeah, I love this question because it has made a huge difference for us. A few years ago, I did an analysis about why were people leaving our company, because we have high turnover, and what could we do to retain them longer? And what I discovered was that we were hanging on to people that just weren't a good fit. They were sticking around for 2 months. They weren't detail oriented. They weren't pleasing clients. We were losing clients over it. And I was like, this has got to change. And so we implemented it as part of our hiring that if you don't get it or you're not a good fit within 3 days, then we just part ways. It's not a big deal. It's not that you're a bad person. It's just that, because like what you said about filling out the Trainual modules is that they get this certain sense of accomplishment that they've accomplished these modules and they're proud of themselves. And when I can see that they're proud of themselves for finishing the module, learning more about the company, then I know they're a good fit. And if they're not, then they're probably not going to be a good fit, and they're probably not going to care about someone else's home. So that has been a huge time saver, stress saver, money saver, all of those things for us.
So for you, it's get fully trained in 3 days, or here's the door.
Yeah, they're not fully trained, but we know that they want to do a good job by that point.
I love that. Yeah. Ryan, Brad, how about you two?
The moment folks, we typically will hire and then we want to start them through immediately with Trainual. In fact, one of the first pieces that we did was a little welcome package, just wanting to make sure people feel welcomed when they start. And I can go online and see who's completed that part and who hasn't. And of course, in order to get to the next part, you got to complete that first welcome part. So
I love it. That's such a good tip, and it's such a simple one, but everybody that's listening should have some basic welcome. Think of if you're not going to be in the office or maybe you're on vacation the day a new person starts, not everybody gets the same welcome into your business. And so if you can record some kind of enthusiastic video about why you're excited you just hired this new person and what the training experience is going to be, then everyone is at least getting that foundational experience. And so it really levels up your first day onboarding. Anything to add there, Brad?
Yeah, I'll say just, and one additional comment on the thing you were mentioning before on that sort of that ROI aspect. And I just want to impress, because a lot of people struggle, well, where do I start and begin? Because you start brainstorming, there could be this huge list of things. And we literally make people go through and add a column for dollar value. And sometimes it can be a direct calculated cost, but a lot of times it's opportunity cost. And I would encourage anybody to make that be a part of your vocabulary when you engage in this world, because it's opportunity cost is one of the biggest elements that you're saving on when you're getting people doing the right things and, kind of more efficiently. But yeah, for us, to your question, it's in EOS, there's this whole, get it, want it, got the capacity, right? GWC. And when you bring employees on, it's like, do they get it? Do they understand what their needs are? Do they want it? But then if they've got both of those, do they have the capacity, right? Do they have a lid on their ability? Can they actually have the capacity to perform? You can want it all day long, but you have the capacity. And so for us, putting people through the process and using Trainual for that helps us to validate that get it, want it capacity, because they don't hit all three, then it doesn't work. And the other thing is actually using it to train clients as well of how to work with a VA. So back to the point of encourage, if there's a way to help to use this as a tool to get your clients trained on how to best interface with you to make them most successful. We have a whole training before they can even interview a VA. They have to know how to use tools like Loom and screencasting and so forth. So it allows us to have them tested, because we don't want to set them up, for failure, and make sure that they're valid in knowing how to be successful with the VA. So it's another kind of trick we've used.
It's like you're reading through my notes, because I was just going to ask if anybody uses tools like Loom or like any of these other tools to supplement. We have the quick embed feature in Trainual where you can put things in from 700 other applications. And I'm curious if there have been any integrations or any things that have superpowered your accounts.
I'll just piggy that on the screencasting. If anybody on here hasn't used Loom as a tool, and I know we're adding, and we're in the middle of doing that, because for a while before that the integration was kind of available, we'd been using another tool. But screencasting will change your world if you really embrace it. When I speak on this stuff all the time, it's one of the tools I share right at the beginning. I said, before I even talk about outsourcing and VAs and all this stuff, these are 3 tools you must use that you will use that will change your world if you never do any outsourcing. And using screencasting, because the biggest struggle a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners have is like, they don't jump out of bed every day wanting to document processes. That's not the most exciting thing. They want to start 9 new things and not finish them, right? We want to have 500 shiny balls floating around. But screencasting makes it easy, because we're great at talking, right? As you just let you record your screen, your voice, your mouse, and you'll explain things with the nuances of your voice that you will not take you time to type out or bullet point or do screenshots and do arrows with text boxes inside of PowerPoint. So if any of you haven't explored that, it will change the game, not only how you communicate internally and documenting processes, but even things too, like documenting and sharing proposals for sales proposals. So if in your business, you create PDFs and you email that over to a client and say, hey, read this 20-page PDF proposal. Let's get on the phone and talk about it. Use Loom to go through and walk through it visually and let them watch that video before they open it. That lets them digest the content faster and more efficiently. So another little hack on even using it for sales proposals.
Yeah, I love that.
Brad, well, what's the third one? So there's Trainual, Loom. You mentioned there was 3 systems that you.
So Dashlane is another big one for us. So as far as sharing logins and passwords, Dashlane and LastPass is a big thing everybody freaks out about a outsourced resource managing their LinkedIn or their website or whatever. So using secure access type of tools, and then virtual desktop environments, whether it's VMware, AWS, is kind of key.
I love the fan love coming through in the chat for Loom. It's a great tool. But ironically, I grew up in the same town that Loom's CEO grew up in, and so we were one of the first 3 companies to do a Loom integration. And Trainual is such an obvious use case for putting those videos into your Trainual account. But that was our vision at the beginning, was however you want to document it. It could be slides, it could be PDFs, it could be just writing out text, it could be images, it could be videos. Just get it into one place, audio recordings, and that's what we've tried to do. Any other tips on formats or media, April or Ryan?
I just have to say that I am not a techie person, but I'm just about to finalize our orientation video so that we don't have to do that once a week and waste the time doing that. And I've been so impressed with how easy it is how intuitive the program is, especially with doing Loom, adding Loom, and all the different options that there are. So for people that are not process oriented, are not technical, it's very easy, and it's almost, should I say, fun?
Fun. Imagine you can have fun documenting. All right, I'm going to ask one more question. We'll start with Ryan just to make sure we close this out. Keeping your stuff updated. A couple of you mentioned that it can get stale if you don't look at it. And so, Ryan, having had this business for 11 years and now putting this stuff in Trainual, is there anything that you're doing to make sure you check it every once in a while or keep it up to date?
Our staff now are doing a better job of going through and updating those. And they do get updated, whether we are looking through, plan, do, reviewing a new process, whatever it might be. And then I have 1 or 2, actually 2 of our staff that I always will then send things to for them to review, to make sure that they sign off on whatever the process might be to ensure that it's the right thing. And that just happened yesterday, in fact. And so we tend to involve our team in making sure that whatever we're doing and not making, I try to make sure I stay out of the way as much as possible. And so just because Ryan thought of this, a year ago or 11 years ago, doesn't mean it's the way we want to do it today or tomorrow.
Yeah, if anyone watching has seen the Undercover Boss show, I feel like that's what we all kind of want to do, is to not have to do the role, but to get back into it every once in a while and be like, oh, why is it being done this way? And so it's pretty fun when you can empower your team to just say, question everything. If there's a new best practice, let's put it in Trainual, roll it out, make sure everybody's doing it the same way. As we close out here, a couple more minutes, any final thoughts from any of you or recommendations to people that are just getting up and running?
Just do it, or pay somebody to do it. If you're not a process person, it took me literal years to write that original manual, and it would have taken me 10 more years to get it all implemented into Trainual if I did not trust someone else to just do it.
Great tip.
Yeah, just avoid kicking the can down the street with it. I mean, this is one of those that if you're a business owner that dreams of kind of growing and expanding, and I know a lot of us as entrepreneurs and business owners have been in that place. And there's a reason why the stat is only 4% of businesses do over $1 million a year in the United States, right? And a lot of that is because they grow, they're wearing all the hats, and then they just hammer this growth ceiling and they just deflect off of it. And it's because of a limitation of cash, people, systems, and processes. And process is one of the easiest fixes that you can do more with less people if you document, kind of effectively. So, if you use EOS, and I can't encourage enough, if you use EOS or Traction or something, make this be your quarterly rock, your quarterly goal, put it down, have accountability in your team, and get buy-in from your team and your employees as well, and the impact, and hold each other accountable to making it happen. So it's not that thing that, come March of next year, it's still sitting on the radar to do. It is probably one of the most fundamental things that can be key to your scale, is getting that stuff done and save on payroll costs, right? You can get more done with the same people a lot of times if you just do it more efficiently.
And make more money immediately.
I'd echo those things in just getting started. I'm sure we've all heard this, where you don't have to be great to start, but you got to start to be great. And I was super busy while finding Trainual with then adding a hospitality group and some other nonprofit work that I was doing. And I was so lucky to find Trainual has folks that will take whatever you have and implement it into Trainual. And so we were able to use Tamara Kemper as an incredible resource. It was just it was that just get started, Ryan, kind of thing that was incredible. So.
Well, she is incredible. And fortunately for everyone listening, you'll get to hear from some of our certified consultants later in the program here. This has been amazing. So many incredible takeaways. I hope it's been useful just to hear your stories for everybody that's listening, because they could totally put themselves in your shoes, just like you can put yourself in their shoes.